My name is Jeff Fried. I'm really privileged to lead product management for data platforms and to work with an amazing team and serve really amazing customers. And for the next 45 minutes, I'll be taking you through really directions. This is a roadmap session with some spotlights around new and next features and capabilities of InterSystems IRIS. And something you heard this morning is this tagline of creating the future with InterSystems IRIS. So what I'm hoping I'll leave you with is a sense of what that means and how you can do that. And the first thing to say is that merely by being in this space, focused on data and analytics, as I know everybody in the room is, you are in a great space to, quote unquote, invent the future, because data is at the center of so many business processes, so many decisions, so many key outcomes. And you heard a lot about that this morning from Terry, from Scott Now, from all the customers. The other ingredient is to have a direction forward and to be on the road. So I'm going to lay out what that looks like for us and invite you to come with us on that road. How many folks here are currently using InterSystems IRIS? A few. A few. How many are using Cache? A lot. How about Ensemble? Also a lot. Fabulous. So, as you may or may not know, we first announced InterSystems IRIS 2 years ago at Summit, before my time. I joined the company a year and a half ago, and did ship the first release roughly a year and a half ago. So we have a lot of happy customers already, but I think this is about the time we expected that people who are running Cache would want to know, okay, is the water safe? Are there sharks? What's it look like? And I'll be recommending some sessions around that. But the goal of it, I think we've probably been inundating you for the last 2 years with the InterSystems IRIS message. It will be very familiar because we're focused on helping you field mission-critical, data-intensive applications. And InterSystems IRIS, and then a year ago we introduced IRIS for Health, include the capabilities of the Cache database and more. They include the capabilities of the Ensemble, interoperability, and more. The analytics that some of you may know of as Deep Sea and iKnow and more are all built in. And then for IRIS for Health, we have specific healthcare protocols, HL7, FHIR, DICOM, transforms between them, a FHIR repository, and more. So the goal here is to provide a platform on which you can build pretty amazing things. You may not need to use all of it, but I want you to know about all of it because I have fun with that, and I think that it will hopefully spark your imaginations for what's possible. In the last year or so, I've been organizing my product management team, and since we have one platform product and multiple people, the way we look at it is audiences. The people who are using our products include developers, operations folks, interface engineers, data scientists, and you'll see some of these audiences in going forward, and I'd be really interested if you're really into this, go to the persona session on Wednesday and teach us what this looks like in your organization. Because I have yet to meet a customer that has only one of these. Obviously, there's some overlap. We're doing a lot with DevOps, and that's both developers and operations. A lot of the work in Python and data science is developers and analytics. But just as a sense of what you'll see there, and then I'll be taking you really through 4 themes. How many folks were at Summit 1 year ago? Fair amount, okay. So 3 of these themes you would have had beaten into you by PowerPoint to death a year ago, and you will have recovered by now, hopefully. The cloud, AI and machine learning, and freedom of choice are things we've been building on for the last year and will continue with. But the 4th theme here, we didn't talk about as much as I think it deserves, because it's a big part of our investment in strengthening our strengths. As I've gotten to meet some of you as customers, the feedback I've had is that a whole lot of S's, speed, scalability, security, stability, support, essentially every word that begins with S is what is part of why you work with us. And we're focused very much on strengthening those as well. Okay? So I'll take you through those 4 areas, do spotlights on some new stuff, and we'll have a little bit of a fun whirlwind here. Starting with the cloud, and you heard Scott talk about that this morning. You heard the panel of customers talk about their cloud strategy, and this is somewhat inevitable. But how many here are already running in production in the cloud? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, how many wouldn't admit it or didn't have time to raise their hands? Okay, how many of you are running something in the cloud? Right. This is a Gartner prediction that within 3 years, 3/4 of database applications will be running in the cloud. So it's really a sea change in running not just your Salesforce or your test systems, but production. And we've seen customers moving a lot of stuff to the cloud quite quickly. You heard MSC this morning has moved all their production onto Azure. And what we're focused on in this area is to make it easy for you guys to try IRIS, to buy IRIS, to build it, and build your applications on top of it, to run and operate in the cloud. That's a huge theme. The performance and price performance is the thing that we're really keeping an eye on. And then building out dynamic scale, for example, spinning up additional instances and then connecting them through ECP in 100 milliseconds is a big focus. So that really involves a strategy in terms of what are we doing from a roadmap and a product perspective that has a series of new offerings in the cloud, starting with new ways to try, buy, and run. And you'll see a lot of those here at Summit. We've made it so you can work in a few clicks. We don't yet have offerings of managed services or PaaS or database as a service, but it's a request I hear a lot from customers, and that's now squarely in our sights. Alongside that, we're working to support what is called here modern DevOps. Anyone here go to the container boot camp yesterday? How was it? Good. Okay, so we focused a lot on making sure that everything in data platforms, in IRIS and IRIS for Health, is containerized. We've started introducing our first container-only modules, such as the InterSystems API Manager. And we're working a lot on things like Kubernetes, which is a container orchestrator used now by all the major cloud platforms as well as on-prem. So that's a big focus. And then last but not least, there are things that are available in the cloud as new technology that you probably wouldn't buy and put in your own data center. GPU servers, Optane memory. You can rent these things. And you'll see sessions here about, for example, use of Optane. We expect more people to use that in the cloud than on-prem, because you don't have to buy anything. You just have to order the right service. So that's really our strategy, rolling out a series of cloud offerings while making continual progress on DevOps and continual progress on leveraging different elements in the cloud. So a couple of things to spotlight here. If you go to the InterSystems website and you hit the try button, I think you heard about that this morning, you get your own instance of IRIS with a pre-built IDE, 2 clicks, 35 seconds, and you're playing with it. It's a great way to get hands-on quickly, to have people in your organization get a taste of things, and you really don't have to set up anything. Has anyone tried this? Okay, what did you think? We have listings in all the major cloud marketplaces, including ways that you can buy IRIS directly through AWS or Azure. So some of our customers have said it's more convenient for me to procure IRIS and pay as you go and pay through the cloud provider. And then we've worked it out with the cloud provider, so it's easy for you to manage, easy to buy. And you'll see a couple of places in this conference, but in particular, Wednesday morning, I host a keynote that has a lot of demos of this. We have a deployer that has made it easy to spin up production configurations of IRIS and IRIS for Health in the cloud, not just large instances, but already pre-deployed with the mirrored instance in a different availability zone, with the right networking, with the right memory configurations, with a few clicks. So for those of you that want to try or buy or run IRIS in the cloud, those are all things that we've been working at very intensively over the last 6-9 months that are now available. Containers and Kubernetes, I mentioned. So there's several sessions around the Kubernetes operator, and what we're doing with that is making it easy, not just for our software, but for your software to be spun up in interesting configurations very quickly within a DevOps pipeline. And one thing that I'll tell you now that we will, as long as you promise not to tweet about it, because we have not announced this, we've built in support for ARM processors. Amazon is offering ARM-based instances for 40% less than Intel-based instances. So it's a way simply that as long as we provide good price performance on those platforms, then we'll be able to advise you how to save money on the cloud. So if you're interested in more around the cloud, there's a cloud roadmap session, which is this afternoon. And I put in a couple of specific other highlight sessions. You probably already have these in your agenda. If you don't already have it and you're really interested, we have an all-afternoon enterprise DevOps symposium on Wednesday afternoon after Global Summit. Talked about the cloud. How about AI and machine learning? Anyone here have a ML initiative in their company? Yeah, any of you know you feel like you need to do something in this area, but you don't know what yet? Yeah, I hear a lot about that as well. And I think the main thing I want you to know, if you're not ready for it, is we're ready when you are. You hear a huge amount of hype about AI. I mean, this is Andrew Ng, who basically equates AI to being as important as the invention of electricity or fire. And I sort of like having fire and electricity around. So this is pretty significant. And our general focus here is to make sure that InterSystems IRIS will make it so you can do data access at high speed in a way that's convenient for data scientists and governed. I visited one of our customers that has a 6.7 terabyte biodevice database, a gold mine for their data science group. They have analysts that were saying, just give me the data. And IT was going, well, wait a second. This is huge. It's full of PII. No way. So they had an impasse for almost 2 years about using this data, and simply by using IRIS, and think of this as materialized views inside of the database that then surface in Spark as data frames. They can make sure that the data scientists don't get the keys to the kingdom, but get all the data they need to do their work. There's 2 parts of our machine learning and AI strategy and roadmap. The first is incorporating AI. These at a high level are the things that you can do without building models, just by choreographing different AI services. Think Alexa as a front end, conversational front end to your application. Think about using machine vision services, because there's 5 companies spending each north of at least $2 billion a year building these services. We're not trying to compete with that. We're just trying to make it easy for you to leverage. The other is to embed this into application to really show the answers. So we're adopting machine learning within our own products to make them smarter. You don't need to do anything. You just watch the product get smarter. We're making it so you can surface predictions easily within applications. In our HealthShare and TrackCare product, this comes up through what's called the clinical viewer, those of you that may be using those, but much more than that. And orchestrating, it turns out that InterSystems IRIS interoperability, III, that some of it's a very similar successor to Ensemble, turns out to be quite good at stitching together these different cognitive services into interesting applications. The other part of our AI strategy is to make it easy for you to build models. And in this world, you have the data, and that data is the basis of unlocking AI, because without data, you got nothing. The algorithms are built from that data. And the 3 typical stages here are to wrangle the data, to collect it, work with it, to build the model, actually using machine learning algorithms, and then to deploy the model. And most data scientists say they spend 80% of their time doing data wrangling. Most managers say the data scientists spend the other 20% of their time complaining about data wrangling. But our strategy is to help in all 3 of these, to simplify the data wrangling as we do today through SQL, through interoperability, and more. You'll hear more tomorrow about a clean data initiative, for example. To speed the model development, which you do today in InterSystems IRIS through surfacing things in Spark. And also, as you heard this morning from Scott, our new QuickML, which makes it easy for non-experts to tap into machine learning in their applications. And then deploying models in production is really part of the tricky thing, because these are not deterministic and they're data dependent. And we do that already today through our PMML runtime engine. But with QuickML, we've got a whole nother level of being able to train and run quite easily. So that gives you a sense. These like 2 parts, incorporating AI and accelerating AI. A couple of things I'll highlight here. Has anyone used our PMML engine today? Okay, so this is PMML is the predictive markup predictive model markup language. It's a standard way to take a wide variety of analytic models and then deploy them. And you can output from a lot of data science environments directly into InterSystems IRIS and then run it at low latency on your live data. We have a parallel Spark connector to feed data frames that I mentioned a little bit earlier. And there's a session about that on Tuesday afternoon, as well as some labs if you want to get hands-on with this with InterSystems Online Learning. We've unveiled a community project, which is called the ML Toolkit, working with Python and R and predictive models. There's a couple of sessions and a hands-on exercise here at Summit. And then we've announced today QuickML. And QuickML, at a high level, simply puts this kind of syntax into SQL. So you create a model predicting something from your existing data. Because many of you have said, we have existing applications. We're already working in this milieu. How do we make it really easy? So training a model from there. And initially, these may not be super sophisticated models, although we have a mechanism for you to get fancy. They're just about leveraging the data, using machine learning, and playing the data where it lies, if you will. And then you can use the predictions within any kind of SQL syntax you want. So super powerful. We're also unveiling a thing called analytic workflows, which is meant to make it easy to deploy into production things that may have been developed by multiple different people in different technology stacks as experiments. And then really running it in production is a whole nother game. And there's sessions about that. So a couple of highlight sessions. Right after this, in this same room, is a BI and analytics roadmap that covers some of this AI stuff as well as BI. I don't know what CI is. There's got to be a CI and a DI in that progression. And these experience labs, I definitely recommend. The AI services for intelligent apps is this interoperability element and the ML toolkit I mentioned. And again, if you're really into this, stay Wednesday afternoon and we've got a 3-hour symposium. So that's our cloud direction, our AI direction. Let me talk about freedom of choice. This can mean a lot of things, but at a high level, it means that as the world speeds up, what did the speaker this morning say? That time is becoming warped in some nonlinear way, or exponential. There's a lot more choices. And that shows up in programming languages. So for example, Python has had a meteoric rise in the last 2 years. And that's why we added Python support to InterSystems IRIS this summer. And you'll see more of that to come. But also, there's a lot of other components and trends. This is another Gartner slide, maybe perhaps overly hyped. They gave us credit for being really good at 7 of these trends. But we don't do everything, and we don't try to do everything. So for example, we have no built-in blockchain, but we have, through our open exchange, a blockchain adapter to Ethereum, so you can use it in interoperability, and partnerships with people that do blockchain. So that's the idea of being open and giving you choices. So our key commitments to you in this area are to keep current on top programming language support, to do the same thing with analytics. In addition to built-in analytics, you can bring the tool of your choice. And to keep integrating with new technologies on the platforms of your choice. So the open analytics picture, again, you'll hear more about this if you stay in this room, that we have built-in BI, NLP, and database technology. all under the hood, all as one piece, one throat to choke, if you will, as a vendor. And we have added performant connectors to Apache Spark for the data science environment and to Tableau and Power BI so that self-service BI you can do leveraging the cubes and dimensions you've already got for InterSystems IRIS BI. And then, of course, we support a range of standards so that you can show up with the environment or tool of your choice and work across those standards. So that's the gist of native plus open analytics. Our whole interoperability story is also part of freedom of choice. And those of you that have been using Ensemble are very familiar with durable messaging and interoperability. We've added in, over time, obviously a lot of focus on healthcare protocols. We have a set of a Java business host, and we're doing a lot of really exciting stuff in that area to work with Java and .NET at high performance. So you can leverage software that's outside of InterSystems IRIS very easily. You've added in key management, flexible key management for security and encryption, managed file transfer to leverage EFSS systems, things like Dropbox, Box, Kiteworks. And the two most active areas right now are in IoT, because we're seeing more and more customers show up with high volume of data from IoT. You think about MSC with their millions of containers, each with data. Every manufacturing floor is full of data. And there's more and more of that happening, and that's the area of IoT integration. There's a few sessions here, and then you heard about InterSystems API management. So increasingly, interoperability is not just the semantic or message-based interoperability, it's also device interoperability and API interoperability. And that's where we're going to make sure that you're covered in any of those areas. A few spotlights there. I mentioned programming language coverage and the addition of Node.js and Python support both for relational access and also directly to globals that you may have in your existing applications. Obviously, we're supporting all the major cloud platforms, so you have a choice there. This is a image of the Power BI connector, which is published with Power BI by Microsoft, is probably the more performant of the open BI connectors we have today. And the InterSystems API Manager, if you want to know more about it, it's shipped GA. There's a couple of sessions here. We'll be highlighting this on Wednesday morning. Really interesting for those of you that are doing API development, in addition to being able to start with a Swagger spec and generate object script code, which we've also added. We are working in the IoT area in a variety of ways. You can go to the Tech Exchange and see IRIS running on a Raspberry Pi. If you're a hobbyist, that's really cool. My next door neighbor has, 24 Raspberry Pis spread around his living room, and he was thrilled. But it's not just for the makers. A lot of the folks who are working on IoT start with this platform to prototype their hardware and then use that same ARM-based processor in their production hardware for IoT applications. And for those of you, who's into HL7 here? Great. So we've been trying to drive the effort and cost of building an interface down, and I set for the team a goal of drop it in half over the last year and drop it in half again over the next year. So you'll see a session this afternoon about the HL7 productivity toolkit, and also some hands-on things around the tooling that we've done, mostly usability-based, to make the interoperability engineer's life a lot better. I mentioned the Open Exchange. This was announced a year ago here, actually went live in November. We now have 160 tools and applications on OpenExchange. So check it out and please add to it. And there's a variety of sessions and labs there. All right, so we've talked about freedom of choice, and I saved sort of the bread and butter for last, which are this strengthening our strengths theme. And here, as a relative newcomer to InterSystems, this has been delightful for me to meet people who are really, really complementary about the stability, scale, speed of the underlying platform and of the technology. And that's what, frankly, won us our award for customer choice for database platforms. So that's thanks to you guys. And keep it coming. So you're allowed to criticize, but you're also allowed to compliment. In this area, we're just focused on continually keeping our technology fast, scalable, secure, compliant, robust, which has a number of unsung heroes working deep in the trenches all the time. And a lot of this will be familiar to you. Perhaps we may market in different terms because part of the goal of marketing is to confuse you. But under the hood, the globals module, which is part of what makes high ingestion speed work and part of what makes multi-model work, continues to be a focus of performance optimization, optimizing out use of space, and really being able to be blazing fast while having that flexibility. Same thing with ECP, which is sometimes referred to as our distributed data mesh, that using ECP gives you flexibility and gives you a lot of the, if you will, the coherency guarantees that you expect out of transactional databases, but in a distributed environment. So these are things that we are constantly working on. From a performance standpoint, version to version to version to version, this is a benchmark from a customer about where lower is better. They got a factor of 2 improvement in performance moving from cache to the latest version of IRIS. Now your mileage may vary. I think in our adoption guide we're saying typically it'll be 30%-ish. But I personally believe in any uniform performance benchmarks. You really do have to try this yourself. But some customers are telling us more, they're getting even more than that. Same thing from a globals perspective. How many folks don't use SQL and just go directly in object script to globals? So we talk a lot more about SQL because that's the general market population, but we're also very actively working on improving the performance of globals. And if you go to the performance session, it says SQL performance, but actually a fair amount of it is about things like the new node tables and how do you get the most performance out of those. Another piece of this is being easy to build on. And I'd be very interested in feedback about this as well as everything. We shifted a year ago to a 2-stream release process like many, many companies do, where we have quarterly releases that are container only, that work with a DevOps process that are shipped in the cloud, and releases of kits that are annual. So you can use the latest and greatest. That makes us able to be more responsive in the market, to have a release cycle from the time that we need to do something to that we get it out the door is 3 to 6 months. But it also means that you can keep an eye. You know if stuff's in 2019-4, it's going to be in the next annual release. And it helps us make these predictable, which a lot of customers have said, frankly, the number one thing I care about is that I can plan on when it's coming out and I know what's in it, and I've gotten a chance to work with it in the lab before it goes out, because a lot of you are building and distributing your own applications on top of this. So we appreciate that you have that planning cycle to work with. And of course, we're keeping current with platforms and protocols. Both Cache and IRIS support Red Hat 8, for example, in the most current release just about to come out. A couple of spotlights there. There's a session about HCI, convergent infrastructure, because there's a lot of hype around that, but also some real reality. And we'll talk a lot about I/O patterns and how to get the most out of it. There are reference architectures we publish for all the major cloud platforms. There's benchmarks, and I mentioned the global access performance. So if you, for example, are using reverse dollar order, you should see a pretty good benefit in InterSystems IRIS right from that. There's, in the Tech Exchange, a new pre-built performance test bed, which we're just not ready for prime time, but the goal is to have something where you can spin up something that's a reference configuration well built, and then run whatever benchmarks make the most sense for you. And last but not least, we've put effort into making it easy for you to move your Cache or Ensemble-based applications up to InterSystems IRIS. Some of those were things that we learned, such as 8-bit support, non-Unicode being extremely important to a number of customers. So we have added that to InterSystems IRIS and made sure it works in this conversion process. And there's sessions around this as well. So there's, in addition to, this is more than an upgrade. It's a change in platform technology. It provides a way for you to hook your code and data into the process so you can do conversion for your applications in the field. And there's sessions around adopting InterSystems IRIS. Those of you that want to know a little bit more, okay, what's in it that I didn't have in Cache and Ensemble, and why do I care? And what does it mean to move? And then a couple of sessions, there's 2 each, of the adoption and in-place conversion, as well as a nice security session and a number of performance things. Okay, so I've taken you through 4 themes at quite a high level to give you a sense of where we're going in the cloud, where we're going with AI, where we're going with these freedom of choice areas, and how we're strengthening our strengths. And I hope that that's given you an ability to invent the future, if you will. This is yet another Gartner view that data and analytics and AI together are really at the centerpiece of a lot of organizational change. There's cultural aspects around it. There's people aspects and leadership, but this is the centerpiece of creating really strong business outcomes. The other perspective I'd like to offer you is that InterSystems IRIS is actually remarkably flexible in application. And you may be using it in one corner or another, but if you think of the 3 V's of big data, if you will, in volume, sheer amount of data, there's a well-established data warehouse field. And we have customers using us as data warehouses with very good price performance results. But there's also a whole area of non-SQL analytics, most of which is based, like singular value decomposition is all about math and matrix math, and not about SQL at all. If you think about high velocity in a traditional market, these would be called CEP, complex event processing kind of systems used for trading, et cetera. But we're seeing a lot of IoT applications that have a much bigger state. Some analysts are calling this augmented transactions that let you do pretty sophisticated choices at low latency, high throughput. And the same thing in terms of variety. There's a variety of kinds of data that have been covered pretty well traditionally by ETL or MDM systems, but that's also exploding as you end up with image data, streaming data, et cetera, et cetera. And it's very interesting to me that we have customers in all of these areas. I'm not saying that we'll do everything for everybody, but I would ask that when you think about your next project, consult with us, because there are probably more things and more areas that we can help you than you might realize. And that's both because we're investing a lot in the technology and because of the things many of you are used to, that as a company, remarkably stable and strong financially, and we have an unbelievable, for me, I used to work at Microsoft, by the way, and it's unbelievable to me the way that our support organization works. We will not ever force you to upgrade. We will not push you off of what you're running because we know that your business depends on it. So that's the basis of what I hope will be a great path forward for you as well as us, and really interested in your questions now. We have about 4 or 5 minutes for that, but also your feedback at any time. Talk to me, talk to anybody on my product management team, anyone in your account team, anyone at InterSystems at all, and let us know your feedback, criticisms, complaints, as well as your problems and how we might help you. Thanks very, very much. So we have some time for questions in the room, and some of you may have put questions into the app, but we've locked the moderator out of the room. If he's able to come in, then he can read some of those. Any questions?
One of the things we're looking at moving, changing our environment and introducing cloud. And our initial, I'll say, baby steps were spin up a DR, have a DR node available that's cloud-based hosted. One of the things is we look, and I guess it's probably more cultural, is the response time from the cloud for things like device integration. We have a namespace that we're just using for in latency. And
Yep.
so that's some of the things that I'm wondering if there's any experience you can share that would alleviate some of the fears or apprehensions from that approach.
Sure. Well, we can't change the laws of physics or the speed of light. But the speed of light is not what causes that latency. It's really the hops and the way the networks are set up, and the cloud providers we see getting much smarter about this. There's a session about performance in the cloud with Ken Takamura, not Ken, that I'd recommend, Takamura. And then get a discussion with any of the folks in our performance architecture group, because I think it still needs to be carefully planned. I see folks that are getting 50 milliseconds round trip, and to me that's about the most you can aspire to, but that's plenty good. Any other questions? Wow, you guys are a tame group. Well, you can come and feel free to beat me up afterwards in private, because for Cache and Ensemble, IRIS, IRIS for Health, and also Health Connect, the buck stops here. So thank you very much, and have a good rest of your afternoon.